Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over the endgame progression of Diablo 4, specifically based around class progression. Now in Diablo 4, a lot more of your character's power is going to come from class progression than compared with Diablo 3, where most of your power came specifically from gear. So I wanted to go over all of the different class-specific progression systems that are going to be giving you a lot of that power all the way into the end game. So first off, we have main stats, because in D4, main stats are going to work a little bit differently, and they're going to work a little bit differently on every single class as well. And generally how this is going to work is every main stat is always going to increase some amounts of defensive depending on what stat it is. But depending on what class you're on, you're also going to be getting offensive stats from 3 out of those 4 main stats. And these 4 main stats are strength, intelligence, willpower, and dexterity. And an example of this is the differences between what a sorceress and a barbarian would be getting. So on the barbarian, strength gives skill damage and armor, but if you go to a sorceress, strength only gives the armor, but they should be getting the exact same amount of armor per strength points. But then if you go to intelligence for a barbarian, you're only getting an increase to all resistances. But if you go to a sorcerer, they're getting that all resistance increase as well, but they're also getting skill damage increase. And then depending on what class it is, even the offensive stat increases you're getting from these main stats can also be changed to different main stats. So in the barbarian, willpower gives resource generation increase, healing received increase, and overpowered damage. And that one's actually the same for the sorcerers, but if you went for a rogue, willpower would actually give different stat increases. And these main stats doing different things for different classes gives a little bit more variation on creating builds and using different stats between the different classes. Because even though gear drops are primarily going to be for the class you're playing, most of those gear drops aren't going to have class specific stats on them. So you'll still be able to use a lot of that gear you're getting on one class for all of your other classes. But if one piece of gear has, say, strength on it, that piece of gear is going to work quite a bit differently for every single one of the classes. And this system has actually changed a little bit since the last time I went over it with some of the new information we've gotten. It used to be every time you leveled up, you would get a few points and you would put them into different main stats, however you want to allocate them. But that's been removed and you primarily get main stats from gear pieces, the renown system, which is account-wide stat increasing unlocks, and the renown system is basically just a zone completion system. And then you're going to be getting a lot of your main stats in the end game from the Paragon board system. So that brings us to the class-specific skill tree. So every class is going to have this pretty big sprawling skill tree. Now the skill tree system themselves work in a pretty similar manner, but obviously every ability on those skill trees are going to be class-specific. A lot of the passive upgrades in the trees are going to be class-specific, and then obviously any upgrades to the class skills are also going to be class-specific. And how this works is leveling up and different rewards from the renown system are going to give you the skill points that you use on your skill tree. And your skill tree is generally made up of these sections of nodes where you unlock this middle node, and then that connects to a handful of different skills that you're able to unlock. And then once you unlock that skill, you are now able to level up that skill 5 times past just unlocking it. This will either increase its damage or reduce its cooldown with every rank. And then after unlocking a skill, you can then unlock one passive upgrade to that skill, and then after that first passive unlock, you get a choice between 2 different passive upgrades past that first passive upgrade. So you get the one passive, then you choose between one of 2 additional passive upgrades for that skill. And these passives seem to be a little bit more substantial. Some of these can even change how the skill works pretty heavily. And then past that, throughout the skill tree, you'll also find different sections of fully passive nodes that aren't tied to any specific skill. So they could just be passive nodes for stats increases or procs. And a lot of these can also affect specific things that skills would do. So maybe you would have a section that's fully based on bleeding. Now this isn't tied to any specific skill, but different skills that cause bleeding are obviously going to synergize with those passive bleed effects pretty heavily. And in this skill tree, you're able to respec singular points anytime you want. That's going to cost gold, or for a lot more gold, you can respec the entire skill tree. And with some new information from some recent interviews with developers, you should be able to fully respec this skill tree every once in a while, depending on how far into the end game you are, because the lower levels, it's super cheap to respec. Once you get into the end game, into the higher levels, it gets really expensive. But if you're somebody that plays the game a lot, you should still be able to respec with not too much of hassle. You're just not going to be able to respec anytime you want. You would probably be able to respec like once a day if you're farming a lot of gold. And also, since the renown system is account wide, unlocking more skill points through the renown system gives it to your entire account. So say if you complete the entirety of the renown system and it say gives 20 skill points. These are just random numbers. These aren't the actual numbers, but say you get 20 skill points. If you go create a new character, that character is going to have 20 additional skill points starting off. So the renown system is going to be pretty important. And also the max level is level 100. And if I'm not mistaken, you continue to get skill points all the way up till level 100. So that brings us to one of the most substantial class-specific progression systems, which are called Paragon Boards. And these are an end-game focused progression system that you'll unlock at level 50. And this is right around the time you'll be completing the main campaign of the game. And once you unlock this system at level 50, you'll be getting right around 4 points for this system every time you level up your character. So going from level 50 to level 100, you'll get the 200 Paragon points you can get. This is not an infinite progression system like Paragon points were in Diablo 3. This is capped at 200 points, which you will get when you cap out your character's level. And the Paragon board system is basically these big checker-like boards where you use points to progress throughout the different boards. You start at the center, and once you get to one corner of the board, there's 4 corners, you unlock one of the gates. Now what this gate does is unlock another Paragon board that you can attach to that section of that current Paragon board. So if you go straight to the top, you can now attach another Paragon board to the top. Now how Paragon boards themselves work is that they're class specific, and there's going to be dozens of different Paragon boards, and we're going to get more in future seasons and expansions. Now, when attaching this new Paragon board, you can turn it in any direction you want. So you have the 4 sides you can turn it to and start on any one of those sides, and then you progress to that new board. And again, you can go to any side of that new board. So going off the one we just placed, we can now go up, left, or right to connect a new board. So after a while, you'll just have a bunch of these interconnected Paragon boards. They're going to be giving you tons of different stats and effects. And again, there are a ton of different Paragon boards for each class. So even just changing a couple Paragon boards is going to change a lot of the stats and effects you're getting on that class. And there's quite a lot of progression tied specifically into the Paragon boards themselves, and they're made up of different rarities of tiles. So first off, we have normal tiles, and these are the primary tiles you're going to be using to progress throughout the board. There's going to be more of these than any other tiles, and these generally just give you primary stat boosts, and this is going to be a main way you're increasing your primary stats by going through all of these normal tiles. And an example of these would be +5 strength, but that could be any main stat as well. And there's a lot of other stuff tying into how the main stats work in the Paragon system. Then we have magic tiles, and these are generally found in clusters throughout the board and provide a more potent set of benefits. And the example they give is actually 10% fire resistance. So magic tiles seem to be more cluster based on different sections of the board. So you would have to go out of your way to get to them, but you'll have a big cluster of them once you get there. And it's seeming like these are more defensive oriented tiles, but we'll have to wait and see all the specifics of what you can get on magic tiles. And then we have rare tiles, which offer a more significant boost in power. And there's going to be a handful of these on every single Paragon board. And the example they give actually makes you think quite a lot about rare tiles you're selecting. So the rare tile example they give is Hungering Fury. Now this grants 10 Fury per kill, but it also has a second effect you can activate. So the second effect gives you 8% increased maximum Fury. This is obviously for a barbarian, but to get the second effect, you need 175 strength and 125 willpower. And there's actually multiple systems in the game that have these stat requirements to activate activate an effect. Now, I'm not sure if every rare tile is going to work like this, if that is their specific design mechanic, where you're not going to just go get every single rare tile because you're not going to have the stats to activate them, or if just some of them are going to work like that. But this tile could still be good if you're going by it and you want to get it, even if you don't have the stats, but getting those specific stats you need is going to give a lot more power from these. And then we have the legendary tiles. Now, you're not going to be able to get a legendary tile on your first Paragon board, but once you get off that first Paragon board and get to a new one, the center of every new Paragon board is going to have one legendary power. So it's one per board after the first board. And the example they give is while your Fury is above 50%, you deal 30% more damage. So these tiles are going to give a pretty significant increase in general character power, and the legendary power is going to be of pretty big importance when selecting a new board, because remember, there are going to be tons of different boards you can select from, and every different one is going to have a new legendary power, so you can imagine how much power you're going to be able to get combining like 3 different legendary powers. So there's going to be a lot of different options when it comes to just selecting boards for legendary powers. And that brings us to a pretty interesting but still pretty complex part of the Paragon system, which are called glyphs and sockets. So essentially, on every Paragon board, there will be these empty tiles on them that are called sockets. And these don't do anything when you go to them normally, but once you get to that socket, you can put glyphs inside of those sockets. Now, glyphs are actually farmed items, and there's been some different information saying where you can get these glyphs from. The main information we have says that you can get these from particularly dangerous dungeons, so I'm assuming these are just some loot tied to maybe nightmare specific dungeons, because those are also the endgame version of dungeons, and this is the endgame progression system. So these are going to be a lootable item out in the world, and once you get one of these glyphs, you can slot it into this socket slot. Now, these glyphs have a radius, so depending on the rarity of the glyph and the level of the glyph, it'll have a bigger radius of other tiles it affects. And they give some examples of this. So they have a level 3 magic glyph. This one has a small radius size, but it grants 30% bonus to all nodes within range. So say if you have like a dozen strength tiles around this, all of those are going to get a 30% increase to the amount of strength they give you. And also keep in mind, all the Paragon boards are developer specific. They're not randomized. So they're probably not going to be putting any sockets next to like a legendary power. That's probably not going to happen. They're probably mostly going to be focused around normal or magic tiles, and maybe once in a while you'll see ones that affect rare tiles as well. But then we have a rare level 8 glyph. This has a radius size of medium, and for every 10 dexterity purchased within that glyph's range, you deal 13.5% increased damage to vulnerable targets, and it grants 40.5% bonus to all nodes within range. So now you're getting another effect when you go up rarity, and you're also increasing the radius by going up level. Then finally, we have another rare glyph. This one's level 15, so it has a radius size of large, and for every 10 willpower purchased within range, you deal 31.5% increased overpowered damage. And then you get 4 strength for each willpower purchased within range. So this adds another pretty big factor in that you can get a ton of additional main stats based on how much different main stats you purchase in the radius. So this one doesn't give a percent bonus to all the nodes in the radius, but it just gives you 4 strength for each willpower purchase in the radius. So if you had this one with like 100 willpower in the radius, you're now getting 400 strength from that radius as well. So just getting different glyphs, getting higher level glyphs, getting higher rarity glyphs is also going to add quite a lot of customization to even a single Paragon board. Now, the glyphs themselves don't seem to be class specific. They don't have any indicator that they're specifically for one class, so you should probably be able to trade these between different classes, but again, everything on the Paragon board is class specific. But that's pretty much all of the class-specific progression you're going to be focusing on in Diablo 4. And like I mentioned, they want a lot more of your power coming from those class-specific choices you make while leveling up. They don't want all of your power coming from gear like it was in Diablo 3, so they want a much better mix of power coming from these class-specific options and coming from your gear. And also keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of different gear that's class-specific. On lower rarities, you're still going to be able to get affixes that are specifically for different classes. Once you get up to legendaries, there's going to be legendary powers that are class specific or general, so every class can use them. And then for uniques, there's going to be a lot of class specific powers from those as well. But that's pretty much all I want to go over. So subscribe if you want to see more Diablo 4 or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about these class specific progression systems. And thanks for watching.